And the Prime Minister has arrived in Myanmar after concluding a visit to China. Prime Minister Modi and Chinese Premier Xi Jinping earlier today conducted their first substantive bilateral meet after the Doklam standoff. Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping agreed that more needed to be done to avoid future border disputes. India and China have agreed that peace and tranquility in the border areas was a prerequisite for further development of ties. During their bilateral talks, Prime Minister Modi congratulated the Chinese Premier for the successful execution of the 9th BRICS summit. He said that the summit had been very successful in making the meeting contextual in a speedy fashion.
ब्रिक्स शिखर सम्मेलन की सफलता के लिए मैं आपको, आपकी पूरी टीम को हृदय से बहुत बहुत बधाई देना चाहता हूं। मैं समझता हूं कि तेज गति से बदलते वैश्विक परिवेश में ब्रिक्स को और अधिक प्रासंगिक बनाने में यह शिखर सम्मेलन सचमुच में बहुत सफल हुआ है।
During the bilateral talks, Xi told Prime Minister Modi that healthy, stable bilateral ties are in line with the interests of both countries. The two leaders reaffirmed their previous understanding of, quote-unquote, not to allow differences to become disputes. Xi reportedly told Prime Minister Modi that China was prepared to work with India to seek guidance from the 5 principles of the Panchsheel Treaty that was signed between India and China back in 1954. Xi further added that India and China were each other's major neighbors and two of the world's largest and emerging countries. Delegation-level talks were held amid efforts by India and China to leave the bitterness caused by the 73-day Doklam standoff.
One of the important points which was made during the meeting was that peace and tranquility in the border areas was a prerequisite for the further development of our relationship. There would be, it is natural that between neighbors and large powers that there would be areas of difference. But where there is an area of difference, it should be handled with mutual respect, and efforts should be made to find common ground in addressing those areas.
Now, bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping began at 10:30 a.m. earlier today in Xiamen and went on for almost, as sources said, an hour. India and China delegations discussed ways to create confidence-building measures. Chinese delegation, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, his chief spokesperson, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and State Councillor Yang Jiechi. Meanwhile, Indian delegation for bilateral talks was represented by Prime Minister Modi, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Foreign Secretary Jai Shankar, Gopal Bagle and Joint Secretary Ravish Kumar. Indian Foreign Secretary Jai Shankar termed the bilateral meeting as constructive, adding that India and China look forward to resolving their differences with mutual respect. Giving details of the meet, he said that counter-terrorism measures were discussed between the two sides.
The meeting between President Xi and Prime Minister lasted, I think, a little more than an hour. Little more than an hour. And I think essentially the discussions themselves are very constructive about where the relationship should be going and will be going. The counter-terrorism issues were largely taken up in the discussions leading to the BRICS. They were not addressed in today's meeting. And the broad sense of those discussions really was that most countries feel very similarly about the challenges posed by terrorism.
Earlier today, Prime Minister Modi arrived at Xiamen for group photo op of BRICS leaders. This was day 3 of the BRICS summit. He later attended the BRICS Emerging Markets Dialogue. Speaking at the session, Prime Minister said that it was the duty of BRICS nations to make a sovereign world, brick by brick. He also stressed on the need to create an inclusive, digital, skilled and a healthy world. Prime Minister Modi also conducted a bilateral meeting with the President of Egypt earlier in the morning. WION's Ramesh Ramachandran was in Xiamen tracking the BRICS summit. Take a look.
Pakistan's isolation is almost becoming complete. Recently, US President Donald Trump unveiled what is known as the South Asia Strategy, which gives India a preeminent role, an influential role in stabilizing Afghanistan, and that would have come as a disappointment for Pakistan given its animosity towards India. And now we're seeing in Xiamen the adoption of a declaration which specifically mentions Pakistan-based terror groups such as the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which conduct terrorism directed especially against India. And coming as it does on the basis of the Shaman Declaration, which was adopted by consensus, including China, would have come as a big disappointment for Pakistan, given what it calls its all-weather ally and relationship with China. Ramesh Ramachandran, WION, Xiamen, China.